So folks, we're going to open the public hearing now. We're going to at least hear from a panel or two before we take our dinner break. So I'm going to call upon the folks that I've got listed for my first panel, and I understand that I've got joint presentation written down here, but I don't know who's doing the joint presentation. So I'll just say the names of the people I have on the panel, and then we'll figure out who's with who. So Denise Ross, are you here, Denise?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Just put yourself back on mute for a second. Patricia McCunn-Miller, are you here?
Yes.
Thank you. Michael Reed?
I'm here.
Thank you. Jane Virtue?
Yes, I'm here.
Perfect. Terry Wong?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. And Marley Gilles, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. So Denise, whom are you presenting with?
I think we have an order,
Okay.
and I believe it is Terry, then Jane Virtue,
Okay.
then Mike Reed,
Okay.
then Patty McCunn-Miller, and then Denise, and then Marley.
Okay, perfect. So we'll start with Terry then. All right, Mr. Wong, and how much time do you want me to put on the clock? Does everyone want their 5 minutes?
Yeah,
Your Worship?
yes, we want the full, oh, sorry, Terry, go ahead.
Yeah, Your Worship, the first speakers, except Marley, is part of the panel, so therefore we'd ask for the complete time.
Okay. All right, go ahead, Mr. Wong.
Thank you. Your Worship, members of council, my name is Terry Wong. I'm a homeowner in Hansford Heights, Briar Hill. I'm here today to speak about the Guidebook for Great Communities. Before I start, I'd like to thank members of council, General Manager Stuart Dalglish, members of the Planning Department, especially Teresa Goldstein, Lisa Kahn, Troy Gonzalez. Your presentation was enlightening, and it's encouraging that the city is willing to work with the community in the guidebook, local planning, and land use bylaw amendments going forward.
Perfect. So we'll
Councillor Collier-Kirk,
all right, Mr. Wong.
thank you for raising the point about openness and willingness of council members to
Hold on
listen
a
to the
second,
public.
Mr. Wong. Hold on. If you're not Terry Wong, please hit mute on your device. We're hearing a lot of background noise, and I can't hear Mr. Wong.
No, I know.
Just give it a moment here.
But I can mute, and I'm already in.
All right, so everyone, please look at your device and please hit mute.
Where is that hide thing?
Before I start, I'd like to thank members of council.
Because someone's got the webcast on, which is delayed. So again, please mute, or we won't be able to continue.
Now it is.
You're mute.
No.
Okay, there we go. Go ahead, Mr. Wong.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Councillor Collier-Kirk, for raising the point of openness, willingness to listen to the public respectfully. We hope that the willingness continues through the public hearing and into the community going forward. No taxpayer should feel that they cannot express their opinions and be heard adequately. So again, thank you. There are several speakers on this panel and subsequent panels expressing their concerns. These are property owners, taxpayers, residents, urban planners, professionals, as well as the average Calgarian who live in Calgary. We are concerned Calgarians. We are not a nefarious group, and if there's perceptions of misinformation, it is because the public engagement process has failed to enlighten the public with the facts.
It's like
Sorry. Here,
Folks,
sorry.
we still have some background noise. Please mute.
No, really.
All right, I need everyone to look at their device and hit mute, please. Hopefully we won't be doing that for the next 15 hours. So unless your name is Terry Wong, you should be muted. Okay, back to you, Mr. Wong.
Thank you. I'll restart the paragraph. We are not a nefarious group. If there's misinformation, it is because the engagement process has failed to enlighten the public with the facts. There is passion and emotions in the community, and sometimes that's a result of heightened arguments in favor or against. Again, the expressions you're here today are genuine feelings of our public. I had not intended to speak early in this public hearing. However, given the people who have consulted with me, they've asked me to take the lead and share the overview of our concerns. Once again, we are citizens deeply concerned about Calgary, as well as the people who live and own and rent and are looking for affordable housing across the city. Together, I would say that we are definitely supportive of the Imagine Calgary Municipal Development Plan, Calgary Transportation Plan, and all subsequent revisions since, including published targets. We are not against we are not against high-intensity, low-density residential forms, which happens to be the most contentious issue of the guidebook. Again, we are not against high intensity or against high density. However, what we do wish to express is that we wish to safeguard the community and the residents concerned relative to building scale, heritage, character, site coverage, and parking in their neighborhoods. We support the rights of property owners and the tenants to live in comfort, in security, in safety, and in preservation of their assets. We also hope that the property owners, in regards to guidebook impacts to local area planning, it is important that established neighborhoods, community characters is protected. I'm glad we heard some of that in Ms. Khan's presentation, especially where there is heritage and community character is significant. The existing low-density, low-intensity community form is the current form, and that is a form that most of the speakers will express is a desired form to start from and preserve. We support granularity in the options of residential building forms. In other words, preserving the recognition of single-family detached, attached, duplex, row housing, townhousing, so that the public can see truly the understanding of what's being required in terms of a land use or development permit. Therefore, what we are saying, we must not start the new guidebook residential policy that combines low and high intensity under one residential land use, what is called the neighborhood local. This type of policy could have unintended consequences not realized during the planning phases, and certainly not realized as it goes through the planning processes. We must start with the existing residential form. Having said this, we also are not supportive of the proposed amendment, I believe in Appendix 5, talking about the single-family detached special designated areas, as this presupposes that the community starts with high intensity, low density. Secondly, the conditions associated with this amendment severely encumbers a lot of communities to affect this particular designation as it was originally intended. We ask that this particular amendment be returned back to administration for further discussion, especially with communities, so that we understand what that amendment is about. For that matter, any amendments should be returned back to the community. Instead, what we do support is that we start with a low-intensity, low-density form and allow the strategic placement of high-intensity residential use where it makes sense, where it's determined by property owners, where it's determined by the people living in the community as they know their community the best. I believe that can be done, again, in the local area planning process, but we need to know that we are heard and it will be implemented. We support the high-intensity residential adjacent to transportation stations and activity centers as requested. However, we support that as through a community input process and allow, in the case of low-intensity, low-density areas, the continued upzoning through spot zoning request. We do not subscribe to high intensity within any defined radius, in other words, 600 meters. The 600 meters may have unintended consequences, such as an area of around the Foothills Hospital, where we have the Foothills Hospital, we have the Orange Max Line, we have the University of Calgary, we have the Children's Hospital, and literally, if you took the 600 meter, all of University Heights would be in the high intensity area with no provision for the special allowance. There are other areas in the community that are similar to that. I do not single out University Heights uniquely. With regards to neighborhood commercial, we do support the notion of drive-through businesses in neighborhood commercial areas, especially where it is safe and where it is safe for the pedestrians, safe for the business operator, safe for the public. We have a hard enough time to keep our local businesses surviving. We do not need to put planning barriers to business success. We support the notion of coordinated collaborative public engagement, one where we are consulted. We have the ability to provide input. We have the ability to provide not just input, the direction as to what the local area plan is, and hopefully to see that through. To be informed and consulted is not enough. Our next panelist will speak about that. We weren't able to see the restricted covenants amendment that was on the board, but again, we do support restricted covenants. Protection of restricted covenants is the law. Finally, we support the guidebook with amendments. Guidebooks with amendments, and we request that the City Council refer the guidebook back to administration for further coordination and consultation, mutual collaboration of the community with the amendments arising from this public hearing.
Thanks very much, Mr. Wong. And you are at time, so thank you. We will go to the next speaker, who I believe is Ms. Virtue. Is that right?
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Your Worship. Good afternoon, Your Worship and City Councillors. I'm Jane Virtue and the President of the Elbow Park Residents Association. First and foremost, I'd like to make it clear that the majority of Elbow Park residents are opposed to the guidebook in its current form and are requesting amendments to be made. Given that these amendments will require careful crafting of the wording, we request the guidebook be referred back to City Administration for further collaboration with communities. Over the past year, our residents have attended guidebook information sessions, met with City Administration, and have gone through the guidebook with a fine-tooth comb. And despite the belief that citizens are unable to comprehend the complexities of this issue, we have become well-informed and educated on the matter. We are not misinformed, and the voices you hear today in opposition of the guidebook are credible. I'd like to make it clear that we understand that if the guidebook is approved, that the zoning outlined in the land use bylaw does not change. We do know, however, that the intention is to use the urban forms included in the guidebook to replace the current zoning designations when the land use bylaw is reviewed in the very near future. To dismiss our concerns and claim we are misinformed about the implications the approval of the guidebook will have on the land use bylaw is simply misleading. The Guidebook for Great Communities is not a benign guideline or list of suggestions that may be used to assist in the LOP process. It is a statutory charter that is the first piece in the process to completely overhaul Calgary's planning and development processes. Regardless of how many years the city has been working on this document, if it is flawed, it needs to be reconsidered. I'd like to borrow Mayor Nensh's cake analogy in order to help explain our concerns. Firstly, the guidebook does not include an urban form category that our community wants. We're unable to choose our flavor of cake because our flavor just doesn't exist. It's not on the menu. Secondly, the flavor of cake is chosen in the local area planning process after the guidebook has been approved. And if the flavor or urban form category isn't included before the LAP process, how can we feel confident that our needs will be met in the West Elbow Park planning process? It's important for the guidebook to be comprehensive before the LAP process begins. We are not placated by City Administration's reassurances that approving the guidebook now will have no effect on getting our concerns addressed later. On another note, it's difficult for me to speak to you today, given the divisiveness that has occurred between City Administration and residents regarding this issue over the past year. Firstly, our concerns continue to receive the exact same canned responses back from administration, and their position has not changed since we began our conversations years ago. Secondly, some councillors and city administrators have been making every attempt to discredit us, including accusing us of spreading misinformation. I suspect because our opinion differs on this subject, and our disagreement with the agenda that has been thrust upon us is viewed as inconvenient and disruptive. Instead of listening to us, underhanded strategies have been used in an attempt to discredit us, to intimidate us, and to stifle our collective voices. Despite this shameful behavior, we continue to show up in droves, sending a clear message that more work is needed before approval. I can understand the frustrations that our opposition to the guidebook creates for you, and I hope you understand that we know that changes are needed in order to streamline processes, revitalize some communities, and stop the sprawl. We know that this project has been in works for many years. However, it is clear that many communities in the city are not ready to have this approved in its current form, and that key amendments are needed before the guidebook is complete and we can all collectively call it great. I implore you to give us more time to collaborate with you to find a reasonable solution to a policy of this magnitude. The proposed Alboya amendment that will be put forward by the next speaker will satisfy the needs of many of the communities objecting to the current guidebook and will go a long way to mend damaged relationships in hopes that good work can occur as a united force in the future. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today.
Great. Thank you very much, Ms. Virtue. Let's go to Mr. Reid, please.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Oh, you're very faint, Mr. Reid. Just come a bit closer to the phone if you can.
Is that better?
Much better. Go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon, Your Worship and Councillors. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak about the Guidebook for Great Communities. My name is Mike Reid. I'm the VP of Community Development for the Alboya Heights Britannia Community Association. I will discuss a proposal to revise Section 2.8, Neighborhood Local Policies, that I submitted on behalf of the Community Association. For convenience, I refer to it as the Alboya 2.8 revision. The revision has been shared with our ward councillor, Councillor Farkas, and I understand he is proposing an amendment that is very similar to ours. The new January 4th revision of the Guidebook introduced new concepts and policies in Section 2.8. It introduced the concept of residential intensity for the first time. They are discussed in Appendix 2. In summary, lowest intensity will include houses, infill houses, secondary suites, and backyard suites. Moderate intensity will include lowest intensity, semi-detached, and duplexes. Higher intensity will include moderate intensity plus row houses and cottage housing clusters. Another new concept in 2.8 is the division of the developed Calgary into 3 map zones. Each zone has different expectations of growth and different policies. For Zone A, Inner City, the policy 2.8.B states that higher intensity forms should be supported in all areas in Zone A. So row houses will be allowed anywhere in Zone A. For Zone B, established area, policy 2.8.F states that moderate intensity forms should be supported in all areas of Zone B. Semi-detached and duplexes will be allowed anywhere in Zone B. It is our understanding that once a local area plan is created based on the Guidebook policies, these policies will allow any house or duplex to be torn down and replaced with a higher density form in all the areas. These are the policies that have generated the concerns of many Calgarians who live in quiet, stable, mature neighborhoods. I am concerned that these policies will allow the random, unplanned replacement of existing houses and duplex with higher intensity forms. This impact will be cumulative and irreversible. Over time, the unique character of the existing neighborhoods will be eroded. The revision I propose retains the Guidebook's goal of focusing higher intensity redevelopment on collector or higher order streets and adjacent to main streets, transit station areas, and other activity centers, as set out in policies 2.8.C and 2.8G. I fully support these policies. This focused redevelopment offers the most opportunity to meet Calgary's growth needs. It is where redevelopment should occur. I am confident that a well-thought-out and creative local area plan process will identify ample redevelopment opportunities in the identified higher intensity areas. There will be more than enough opportunities to meet the growth and choice goals of the municipal development plan. There will be no need to further impact the rest of the neighborhoods. This revision creates a new intensity I call conservation residential intensity. The local area plan process first identifies the appropriate areas for higher intensity redevelopment as described above. The remaining areas would be designated as conservation residential intensity. The intent is to conserve the existing character, context, and heritage of the neighborhoods that make Calgary such a great city. It is achieved by using similar planning and design contextual guidelines and rules that were used to develop these neighborhoods and that are currently being used for redevelopment. The certainty and predictability provided by the current rules are preserved. It will allow us to live our lives without worrying about what might happen to our neighbor's house. I believe the revision achieves a workable balance between Calgary's overall growth and choice goals while addressing the concerns of thousands of Calgarians. I request that the Guidebook referred back to a city administration for further collaboration with communities in order to implement the amendments proposed in this public hearing. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Reid. Do we have a copy of your proposed amendment?
Yes, yes, you do. It's in the agenda package. I think it's page 1114.
I know the one you're talking about now. I just wanted to make sure it was the same. Thank you very much. Let us now go to Denise Ross, I think is next.
No, it's actually Patricia McCunn-Miller.
Oh, I'm reading backwards. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, and thank you. My name is Patricia McCunn-Miller. I'm a resident of Mount Royal, and I endorse the submission of the Mount Royal Community Association. I also support the Alboya Amendment that introduces a scale modifier that supports contextually sensitive redevelopment in mature areas. Today, I'm asking Council to refer the guidebook back to City Administration with instructions to initiate further consultation and engagement with affected communities and their community associations to review outstanding issues and collaborate on proposed amendments. I only became aware of the guidebook during the COVID-19 pandemic. This public health emergency has made it difficult for us to connect. I'm not an urban planner or a property developer. I'm a residential homeowner and a community volunteer. As I tried to understand the 130-page guidebook, I reached out to other community volunteers. Some had planning expertise, but most, like me, were simply trying to understand a complex document. It wasn't an exercise in maintaining the status quo. Rather, it entailed thoughtful discussions about how to provide choice of urban forms and increase densification. At the same time, we looked at how to reinforce the character, quality, and stability of neighborhoods, which is the stated goal in the MDP. My neighbors were not aware of the guidebook and its implications until I spoke with them February of this year. At a recent town hall in my community, attended by 200 households, the overwhelming majority responded to a poll indicating they had never heard of the guidebook prior to notice of the meeting. I've been connecting with my neighbors to bring the guidebook to their attention and directing them to the city website and other community websites for information. The city sends me flyers every month in my NMAX bill, detailing everything from how to clear ice from storm drains, how to use 311, and what to recycle in my blue bin. However, to my knowledge, the city has never included a flyer to inform me about the guidebook. Engagement begins with information, but meaningful engagement needs to encompass consultation and collaboration. This is qualitatively different than counting clicks to a website, registrants to virtual info sessions, surveys, and other passive engagement tools that appear to have counted as citizen engagement. That type of consultation may work for the city, but it has not worked for many of the communities and citizens just now hearing about the guidebook. I think the number of letters sent to council and the number of speakers here today demonstrate that the guidebook is now in active discussion in many communities, and this is a positive turn of events. As a citizen, I want the opportunity not only to be informed, which is how I would characterize the city actions to date, but I also want to become engaged in discussing future development and densification of our communities. The guidebook is a complex issue with lasting impacts, and it merits meaningful engagement with citizens before a final decision. Therefore, I was surprised to read that statement by Lisa Kahn, the city coordinator, referring to public engagement on the guidebook, quoting from Sprawl. We haven't, quote, done public engagement, close bracket, because we want to do this differently, because that type of engagement hasn't been working in the past to actually get us the outcomes we want, end of quote. When I went looking for information on how the city would enable consultation, I found nothing in the guidebook. A search of the Municipal Governments Act disclosed no regulations requiring public engagement for either the guidebook or the LAPs once they are created. So public engagement is an important part of an effective, open, and transparent government. I would recommend that the city include language in both the guidebook and the LAP process that would address consultation. It could read in part that the city is committed to ensuring the guidebook and the decisions that are made regarding the guidebook are informed by diverse input from the citizens of Calgary. Therefore, the city commits to do more than just listen to concerns and share information. The city will actively engage, consult, and collaborate, especially with directly affected citizens, to be responsive and transparent about how it acts on that feedback. The City Planning Group may see itself as the expert on city development and may view public engagement as getting in the way of, quote, the outcomes that they want. But these are not valid
to avoid informed discussions and active consideration of proposed amendments and clarifications. The engagement to date has been focused, I think, on telling citizens about the guidebook. It has not been a substantive exchange on feedback, concerns, clarifications, and possible amendments to address issues. That work still needs to be done before passing the guidebook into law. So I'm asking all councillors, including those representing wards outside of the currently affected zones in the guidebook, to not vote on the guidebook today. I ask that you send the guidebook back to City Administration with instructions to initiate meaningful consultation and engagement with the affected communities and their community associations, review the outstanding issues, and collaborate on possible amendments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's now go to Ms. Ross, please.
My name is Miss Ross. My name is Denise Ross. I'm a resident of Mount Royal. I do not support the guidebook in its current form. I support the submission of the Mount Royal Community Association. I also support the Alboya 2.8 amendment just presented by Mike Reid. It was only a few months ago when I heard about the guidebook, and now I find myself speaking before your worship and City Council about the future of my neighborhood, which I have lived in for 30 years. I want to address heritage in our inner city neighborhoods. Does Calgary really want to forego their past for an uncertain future? I live in a mature neighborhood with many, mainly single-family dwellings, but it also includes rentals and multi-family units, all within walking distance of 17th Avenue. My house is 117 years old. Yes, you heard me right, 117. I recently received a letter from Asia Walker, Heritage Resources and Research Coordinator, indicating that my home was to be evaluated for inclusion in the City of Calgary's inventory of evaluated historic resources. That is a formal acknowledgement that the property is significant heritage value. I am a strong believer in a community preserving its heritage. That said, the guidebook will allow a developer to purchase my home and or my neighbor's home to rebuild with higher intensity, destroying the look and feel of something very important to me. I'm aware that if I decide to include my home in this heritage list, it will be protected. But as creeping development occurs in my neighborhood, my home will become an island. The sacrifice I will have made to preserve a heritage home will cost me emotionally and financially. My story is shared by many others who own heritage homes. I quote from the guidebook, "Heritage resources are defining characteristics of communities and should be retained or protected while balancing the need for redevelopment. I will not be inclined to have my home put on the heritage list unless I have clarity with respect to the nature and the scale of development that will occur to my neighbors and my street. My neighborhood is spectacular. It has hills and parks and abundant mature trees, front yard setbacks, low lot coverage, wonderful character homes, and open streets where we and other Calgarians can enjoy. A community with such attributes so close to downtown is extremely unique, and it sets us apart from other cities." I understand that Calgary needs to find room for future population growth. If citizens were included in determining where density fits in their neighborhood, it would be an easier road to follow. The guidebook was described as a menu or a recipe with ingredients, trying to make it appear less serious. However, we were not involved in creating this menu or selecting the ingredients. With its vagueness comes fear, uncertainty, and doubt. We have heard many councillors in favor of the guidebook stating that it will not change our zoning or land use. But how can that be true? Once the guidebook is passed as statutory document, it will be law, and we will have nothing to say. It seems very misleading. Calgary's historic neighborhoods flanking both sides of the river and all sides of the city should be important enough to preserve. This guidebook breaks my heart. as slowly the history and the unique characteristics of our city are at risk. I understand that history should mesh with progress, but progress should never supersede history. I request that the guidebook be referred back to administration for further collaboration with the communities in order to implement the amendments proposed today. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you so much for being here. Let's go to Ms. Gilles now. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Please go ahead.
Awesome. Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here on the call. My name is Marley Gilles. I'm the chair of the Calgary Student Alliance, as well as the Vice President External from the University of Calgary Students Unit. But I'm here to speak to you today on behalf of all students that are studying, working, and living in the city of Calgary. The Calgary Student Alliance is a nonpartisan organization of student leaders that are both undergraduate and graduate students from every major post-secondary institution in Calgary. We welcome the consultation that was done about the guidebook to students, and as a result, the Calgary Student Alliance is in support of the guidebook for their communities. The implementation of the principles in the guidebook will improve the student experience for all students living in Calgary by encouraging more affordable housing, better access to transit, vibrant livability, and more opportunities. These are the 4 high-level issues that I'd like to highlight that this guidebook will address. First is affordable off-campus housing. The guidebook's focus on the smart densification of existing neighborhoods will lead to an increase in the availability and affordability of housing throughout the city, and this is something that students are desperately looking for right now. As communities densify, more opportunities will be available for students to find affordable housing. The next issue that I want to speak about is affordable and accessible transit. The CSA has long advocated for affordable and accessible transit for all students in the city. Regardless of which institution they choose to attend, one shouldn't be easier to get to than the others. Encouraging the development of Calgary Transit and projects such as the Green Line will play a really important part in attracting and retaining youth to our city and preventing brain drain, leading to a more prosperous city overall. This leads to the third issue of the livability and the beauty of the city of Calgary. Students and young people are looking for a city that is livable, that's walkable, that's historic and appealing. Historical preservation and guidelines for beautiful buildings, parks, and public areas are critical to attract students to come live and stay in Calgary. Calgary has to continue to protect and grow its history, its identity, and its beautiful development. Finally, the last issue is opportunities. Now more than ever, students are looking to be involved and to have opportunities in their city to actually do so. The changing dynamic of Calgary, as well as the robust economic and social benefits that increasing neighborhood density and diversity could potentially bring these communities, it would bring more employment, research, skill-building practice, or even volunteer opportunities for students who are looking to make connections, build experience, and, of course, give back to their communities. Students in particular are a really dynamic group of citizens that offer a lot to their communities, including volunteerism, community engagement, entrepreneurship, and a growing consumer population as this demographic continues to grow. We believe that, quote-unquote student issues don't actually exist and that these issues are for all Calgarians. Calgary students are participating citizens, and we look forward to seeing these changes happen with the implementation of the guidebook for greater communities. Thank you so much for the time.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Gilles. That brings us to the end of this panel, and I will go to Councillor Farkas, please, with a question for the panel.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. My question is for Mr. Reid. Michael, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. I just wanted to thank you, Jane, Patricia, and others for your help in going over the guidebook, as well as your lot of time that you and the community spent going over potential revisions. So I'm definitely in support of what you've worked with our office to be able to put forward in terms of the revision for the new residential intensity. I wanted to pick your brain on the proposed amendment from administration that Councillor Gondek has taken up. Would you mind just providing a little bit of a discussion between the differences between what administration was suggesting, is in contrast to what you feel will address the issue?
Okay, I've looked at the Councillor Gondek's tweet on the revision. One thing, it only addresses single-family homes. There's a lot of duplex communities that want to preserve their heritage and their character by retaining their duplexes. So it doesn't help that group as it does help the single-family homes. The other thing is, it seems like it's the way I understand it, this would be an additional special policy that would be applied after the other policies in the guidebook would be implemented. So it seems like the first policies would, for example, identify the higher intensity areas, and then this would come back afterward and take that intensity off, which seems maybe a little sort of double handling. If we retain the existing lower intensities in the areas where they are now, then we wouldn't need to put them back. And the sort of the terminology of this policy may be used where additional policy is needed. I really don't understand what where policy direction is needed really means. Like who decides that, and what does needed really mean? Well, I guess because I did the other revision, I'm a little bit I understand it a bit better. But this seems maybe a layer added on rather than built in.
Yeah, and if I could offer, it seems that my interpretation would be it would be at the discretion of the city planner who writes the plan, and this amendment may not actually ever be used. Is that your understanding?
Well, it would be done through the local area plan. So, and if that has meaningful community input and consensus, it could be used. It just depends on the sort of the quality of the community input into the local area plan.
Thanks. And my last question would be to characterize your approach and sentiment toward change and development. I know that Alboya historically has not been blanket opposed to development, but more wanting to have influence and control over change when and where it happens. So how would you characterize your approach to change, development going forward? Would it be fair to say that you're not opposed to development, but you want to have more of a voice at the table in terms of when and where it happens?
Yes. So Alboya Britannia on either side of Elbow Drive, just north of 50th Avenue. 50th Avenue is the street that goes from or avenue that goes from McLeod Trail up to the Britannia Plaza. There's a power line there. It's basically a vacant lot. We've spent, the communities spent hundreds of hours on a local, an area redevelopment plan for the development of that Main Street. It's actually called a Main Street. So we absolutely know that there will be eventually very high density forms put there, and the volunteers that worked on that were fully aware of that and did a lot of work to put the density where the density should belong. We have no issue with that at all, and we look forward to working on our local area plan to identify those areas where it should be. We're just concerned about the core of the neighborhoods that may be chipped away at and eventually lose their character.
Great. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your participation, you being here, as well as the time and energy that you've offered your residents as well as our office. Definitely very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Farkas. I'll go to Councillor Woolley, which the last question for this panel, then we will break for supper. Councillor Woolley?
Yeah, thank you. I have a couple questions for a couple of the panelists. Ms. Ross, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Thanks so much for your impassioned. Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to thank you for your impassioned speech on heritage. I know how important it is, particularly to you, from the sound of your voice and the neighborhood. One of the challenges, I think, in terms of the information is that the guidebook, as I read it, and as in all of the work we've done, would massively provide massive amounts of increased in protection to heritage than you currently have today. And one of the things we hear about in Mount Royal, even today without any of the zoning changes, is that some of the older houses are getting knocked down, and I have no problems with a modern-looking house, but we're getting those massive big boxes put on. Are you aware that in the guidebook, the proposed changes and policies around heritage would significantly protect a home like yours, or did we miss the mark there?
I think you missed the mark, because I was not aware of that at all, and I would love to learn more about it. I heard a bit about it in the presentation today, but I would love to know how it would help me.
So, are you aware of the specifics around the heritage policies within the guidebook?
I am not.
And did you participate in any of the community associations' outreach in terms of the development committee's outreach to communities around the protections around heritage?
I did not.
Okay. Well, I'll make sure to get administration to give much more clarity, and so I hope that you can listen for the next day or two, but after the public hearing, I'm going to really get administration to dig in to answer, I think, the concerns that you have and provide more clarity around the heritage protection. So, administration, please get ready for that. Thank you for the time, though. I really appreciate you coming out today. I do have a follow-up question.
Evan, you're saying that the heritage protection would help from people from bulldozing a heritage home. Is that what you're saying?
It will give so much more teeth to the complete lack of protection on heritage homes that we have right now. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I would like to see that in writing.
I'm going to make sure to follow up, because I appreciate all your passion. I can hear it in your voice, and as someone who grew up in a not quite 117-year-old house, but grew up in a pretty old one and live in an old one now, I'm with you.
Okay.
My next question is for Patricia McCunn, and I just wanted to dig into the engagement, because I don't represent Elboya or Elbow Park anymore, but I do represent Mount Royal, and Mount Royal is the only community association out of the 20 or so that I represent who have come forward saying there was a lack of community engagement. And I just wanted to be clear, because just even specific to Mount Royal, we had bold signs outside Earl Grade School. We had articles in newsletters. The development committee has been engaged in the process for years. We went through the Main Streets planning process. My office is super connected to the community association and to the neighborhood. And I'm just wondering, why specifically Mount Royal got missed in this engagement, especially given all of the really tactical things we did in the community. I'm wondering where you think we might have done better specifically. And if we come back to you, what specific tools and tactics do we need to do to make sure everybody's engaged?
Well, let me start by saying that I'm not here to speak for the community association. I can tell you, as I did in my comments, what I heard from members of the Mount Royal community. But beyond that, before I respond to your question about what you can do, I have been alive to working this issue with volunteers from communities across the city. And there was a very common theme that they did not think that the type of engagement that was undertaken by the city was effective. And so I'm telling you that this is not just a view of Mount Royal. It's not how did we miss Mount Royal. It's how did you not engage in a way that communities felt that their voices were being heard and that they had an ability to actually collaborate with you to address their concerns. So,
but I guess just to never mind communities. I guess as the representative for Ward 8, and the 20 communities that I represent will be massively impacted by the implications of the guidebook in terms of its recommendations. Mount Royal was the only community association who said they hadn't been engaged with out of 20.
Well, I don't know that. I can't speak to that, but I can tell you this, that I had a call with you last week, and I asked if you could provide me with better statistics on the engagement that was undertaken, and you undertook to provide that, but you never did. So I think what you did tell us when I said that I thought engagement could have been done better, you said that the problem with the engagement was, quote, you, the public, don't listen. What I'm saying is that when I hear councillors and other officials say that citizens are spreading misinformation or false information, I, as a citizen, look at it from a different perspective. I say we have gaps in understanding the application of the guidebook. So much of it is general. We need the granularity to understand the impact. And I would also say this, because I know some of your colleagues have said this, you say it's just a toolkit. It's not a toolkit. It's a rule book. That is why it's being presented here today as a bylaw. And I think when citizens get engaged and they tell you that they have concerns, what they're saying is we see different interpretations. We have concerns that it may be an interpretation that could be quite problematic in our community. That's why we're asking council today to say, don't pass this today. Listen to what the public is telling you and the amendments that are being put forward, and send it back to have that level of engagement and discourse that would be helpful to getting the guidebook endorsed publicly and positively, and lay a foundation to go into the LAP process so that people are invigorated by the planning process and come to the table understanding that their voices are heard and that we have an ability to embrace that going forward. I think everybody wants to get a positive foundation in place. And no, but you asked me what was wrong, and I'll tell you what was wrong. The planning and development is a really complex area, and they are core activities for the city and for developers, but they're not core activities for average citizens. It's complex. So we want to get it right. And for most of us, the complexities of planning and development never become real until all of a sudden there's a development application and someone's knocking down the house next door, and you wonder, how did this happen? And so then it becomes real, and we start asking questions about what are the rules? What are the setback requirements? Do they have to keep trees? I mean, the list goes on. So I think that the real concern here is the guidebook isn't a toolkit, it's a rule book. And the bylaw, once it's passed, is going to mean that there are going to be changes to the land use bylaw and to the municipal development plan to bring it in line with the guidebook. So it's important that we get the guidebook right, and we take the time needed to get it right. And we talk about the very thoughtful amendments that citizens are bringing forward.
I just want to be conscious of everybody's time, but I just wanted to, that's great clarification, because you aren't here speaking on behalf of the community association. And so your comments were that we haven't done engagement. But I just, I think it's important for everybody to be engaged in a community association. I remember our phone call, and I'm super excited about the opportunity for you to join that development committee and start to dig in to the heavy lifting that they've been doing over the last couple of years. Thanks so much, Patricia. And I just have a question for...
Just a moment, Councillor Woolley.
I don't have any further questions.
That's it. You can only answer questions, ma'am, and you did. So thanks very much. We're going to take our break now. Thank you very much. We will be back.
I have one more question.
I'm sorry, Councillor Woolley. Go ahead.
I know. Ms. Virtue, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and I guess quite the opposite for Elbow Park, and I apologize. I'm going to lean in. I used to be the councillor for Ward 8, and so I still get lots of neighbors reaching out to my office, still a bit confused about some of the ward boundaries. But your neighborhood, on the other hand, just down the hill, has undertaken significant amounts of engagement and have been quite involved in the process over the last long period of time. My office has been getting a lot of concerns around around what they characterize as misinformation from residents in Elbow Park. And I guess I just wanted you to address one of those, which was on a flyer that was received on the doors. It said the guidebook would mean significant loss of park space in Elbow Park. And I just wanted to provide you the opportunity, because as someone who values park space significantly, what policies in the guidebook would mean significant losses of park space in Elbow Park? And do you know on which parks are you referring to when you talk about significant loss of park space?
Well, thank you for your question. I think that what we're referring to is green space. It is green space that would be taken away because the lot coverage would be 60%. Versus, sorry, my batteries are running out. Just let me switch over here. Sorry about that. So in regard to green space, when the urban form category is changed eventually in the land use bylaw, and RC1 restrictions are no longer available to us, there will be a lot coverage difference from 45% to 60%. And when a developer comes and takes a bungalow down and splits that lot into infills, there will be a coverage of 60% of that lot instead of 45%, and that takes away the green space. That takes away the lawn, the trees, the open space, and takes away the light. And that is what we're opposed to, is that eventually, as time goes on and those green spaces disappear, then we will be faced with a change of character in our neighborhood.
Do you think that when you talk to communities about significant loss of green space, do you think that that's what they think it is, Jane?
Absolutely, because we've been very clear when we speak about this issue, and they have educated themselves. As I mentioned, we have people who have spent hours and hours going through the guidebook and have become experts, and they have taken those policies and applied them to what will happen in Elbow Park, and based on that, they are able to say that we will be impacted significantly, and as a result, they do not agree with the urban form categories that have been set forth, and then have therefore asked for the amendment that we put forward to you today.
The lot coverage from 45% to 60% under an RCG, if that were the application, I think our RC2 is 55%. That exists today. And so if we had an application that's not new in the guidebook. And so the significant loss of green space, as you have communicated it, that exists today in policy.
Well, that's the answer that city administration and you continue to provide to us. However, you forget to mention that we are currently RC1. We have no other houses that have any other zoning other than RC1. And we don't have, and if you take away RC1 and replace it with what is proposed in the guidebook, then yes, indeed, it will change what we have now. And sure, somebody can go and request to rezone and designate a lot, but they haven't been successful in doing that over the last, I don't know how many years. We have been successful when we go to the FDAD board that they can't redesignate. We don't want that. Our community doesn't want that. So our community association.
I think we're starting to debate and not answer questions here, so I'm going to put an end to this conversation.
I have two more questions.
Oh, is that because Is that because the answer is not what you want to hear?
No, but Ms. Virtue, if you're going to be like that, I will cut your mic off. No, it's because you just answered a question that was not asked. And so really you've had your 5 minutes. This is the moment for you to answer questions from council members. And Councillor Woolley did not actually ask you a question, you jumped in. But also, Councillor Woolley, you're debating. So let's stick to questions, please.
They've been very clear questions. My last question is there any location in Elbow Park in the Elbow Park neighborhood that you think would be appropriate for anything but RC1?
Well, actually, right across the street from where you live, Evan Woolley, is a lot that is quite significant in size, and it could potentially be subdivided into 3 lots with 3 narrow homes, or potentially it could be made into a multi-family complex and have perhaps 8 different homes within it if we add the secondary suites into the calculation.
And hey,
so
you
yes,
don't identify
indeed.
houses, and I won't identify yours. But would the community association support that that rezoning request?
We would not right now. And then when the guidebook is passed, when we go to defend that, we won't have anything to stand on because we will have completely different rules and policies that will be laughed out of the appeal process, and that will go forward, and it will make it impossible for us to make any arguments against it.
Well, I will ask administration that, but that is not true, and fascinating answers. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks very much. We are going to stop now and take a separate break, and we will come back with... Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor. Sorry, we have a couple more quick questions here. Councillor Farkas?
Thank you. Mine was for Ms. Ross. Ms. Ross, I just wanted to give you the opportunity to finish your thoughts before you were interrupted.
Oh, thank you. Because you know what, I thought of, you always think of a after, and I believe that Evan Woolley. I did go to some information. We didn't have a lot of information in our neighborhood provided to us, but I do get that I can protect my house, but I can't protect the 2 houses on either side of me, and they could become apartment buildings or. Well, maybe not an apartment building, but row housing, or not that there's anything wrong with it. I just want to be clear that I can protect my house. I just can't protect the surrounding homes. And then I'm stuck. I'm stuck with a house on a street with big buildings. And I know that's the future.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Councillor Chu, please. Thank you. All right, we are going to take our break now. We will be back. Councillor Collier-Urquhart is asking if we can shorten the dinner break to an hour. I unfortunately do have another meeting with the provincial government, but I can leave you in Deputy Mayor Collier-Urquhart's good hands if you want to start up in an hour. What's Council's thinking on that?
Yes, 1 hour. I'm good. Joe's good.
All right, I'm not hearing any objections, so...
Farkas here. I'd actually like to move that we shorten it to 30 minutes, just out of respect for the numerous speakers who are on the line.
All right, you have the right to do so. Do I have a seconder for that?
Joe Maglioka.
Thank you. Any discussion on that?
I would be opposed to a half hour, Councillor DeMong.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I would be opposed.
Your Worship,
there's people that have to have dinner with their families.
Okay.
I would also suggest, Your Worship, that staff need time to eat, and an hour is enough time. Half an hour is not.
Okay. Thank you. On the recommendation then to move to a half hour for the dinner break, are we agreed? Any opposed? Well, I heard enough opposed. We'll call the roll.
Councillor Davison?
No.
Councillor Demong?
No.
Councillor Farkas?
Yes.
Councillor Farrell? Councillor Farrell? Councillor Gondek?
Yes.
Councillor Keating?
No.
Councillor Maglioka?
Yes.
Councillor Sutherland?
No.
Councillor Woolley?
No.
Councillor Carra?
No.
Councillor Chahal?
No.
Councillor Chu?
Yes.
My apologies, I didn't get that. Councillor Chu?
Yes.
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 Thank you. Councillor Collier-Cart?
No.
Mayor Nenshi?
No, thank you.
That is lost, Your Worship. 4-9.
Thanks very much. So we will go for an hour. I'll look for general consent. Hearing no objections, we'll be back at 7:25 p.m. probably with Deputy Mayor Colley Urquhart in the chair. Thank you.
Okay.